Today we're going to look at how to infuse a little bebop into your blues playing. I'm going to show you 3 great lines from a classic jazz blues recording by Joe Pass. This is the tune Joe's Blues off the album Intercontinental. Let's get into it. So all 3 of these lines happen as we go from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. So we're in the key of G, we're going from the G chord to the C chord. This is a great spot in the 12-bar form to stretch out a little bit harmonically. Now this first line happens right in the first chorus of this tune. And it's a double time bebop lick that uses some really nice chromaticism and a little bit of the half-whole diminished scale. Here's what it sounds like. So the first part of this lick plays right out of a G7 scale, starting on the note D, then going up to E, F, G, A, then coming back down F, E, D. So then we get into this little chromatic line going from G down to E. From here is where we get into the half-whole diminished scale, and we play from D down to C sharp, then down to B, then we jump down to the E, and then G, B flat, A flat, G, F, and then finally land on E, where we're resolving to the 3rd of our 4 chord, the C chord. So all of that is out of this G half-whole diminished scale. So the whole thing together. All right, so here's what it sounds like in context. I'm going to play some simple blues phrases around it to kind of set it up. And then in this spot, as we transition from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, I'm going to insert this line. So this next line uses some really interesting rhythmic phrasing, as well as a G-augmented arpeggio to slightly alter that G7 chord to build some tension before we resolve to the C7 chord. Here's what it sounds like. So this lick starts out by hitting a G9 chord on the top 4 strings. We've got B on the bottom, then F, then A, and then an E on top. Then from here we come way up to the 15th fret and grab the G note. Then back down to E, and then to C, A, and then down to F. So. Then from here we shift down a position and we kind of play out of like a C7 scale or a C major shape. Right? You could also look at this as a G7 scale. So we're playing D, E, F, G. And from here is where we play our little G augmented arpeggio, starting on E flat, then down to B, then to G, then to F, and then finally resolving to E, again landing on the 3rd of the C chord as we resolve to that chord. So the whole lick. So some really nice rhythmic phrasing in there and a really colorful use of a chord and that augmented arpeggio and kind of moving around the fretboard. So once again, here's what it sounds like in context. I'll play some similar, simple bluesy phrases to kind of set it up. example uses some really nice chords to harmonize the basic melody. This is a signature of Joe Pass's sound. Here's what the lick sounds like. So this lick starts out right out of this G triad shape. We're going to play G up to B and then C and then down to G and then down to D. So, you know, right out of this kind of D shape, open D shape, but moved up to G. Then we move that whole thing down and kind of play out of an F shape. And then from here, we just go right up a G7 scale. Right, so that's F, G, A. And then here we jump up to C, and then here's where we grab our chords. And we're going to come up here and grab sort of the top of, you could look at this as like a G13 chord or a D minor 9 chord, but it's basically just, you know, this note, the E note in the melody, and then we're harmonizing it with a little chord underneath. Then we come down to like a C6-9 chord, right? That's A, D, G, and C. And then finally to a G13 chord with a 9 on top, right? That's F, B, E, and A. And then we come down F, E to round out the line. And then we do these little chords to resolve to C. So that's like a, you could look at that as just a D flat 13 chord moving down to C, or you could look at it as like a G altered chord with a flat 13 and a sharp 9. But basically this little harmonized move is really just outlining this melody, right? Which is right out of like a F major 7 arpeggio, right? Right, which you could also look at as like a D minor 7 arpeggio, which is a pretty common thing to play over a G7, right? You can kind of sub in the sound of a D minor 7 over a G7 chord, or an F major 7. So that's kind of an interesting concept to think about and experiment with, right? You can play F major 7 kind of ideas over G7 to get sort of a colorful G7 sound. Right, or D minor 7. Right, so that's really all we're doing here. Right. So a really pretty line, again, jumping around the fretboard. These are all kind of signature things of Joe Pass's style. He really uses the whole fretboard to be expressive and to really play some interesting stuff. So once again, here's the lick in context. I'll try to play some similar phrases as I played before to set it up. And then when that transition comes from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, we'll play this line. Guys, so check out Joe Pass's version of this tune. I'll put a link down in the description. It's one of the great jazz guitar albums, the Joe Pass Intercontinental album. Incredible tone on that record and just some incredible playing. It's a really good kind of entry into jazz playing if you're a blues player, because it's kind of a slower tempo tune, although he does play a lot of really killer double time bebop stuff, but it kind of has a little bit of everything. It's got some of the chord melody in there. It's got some burning single note playing, and it's got just some really soulful bluesy playing that, you know, if you're not coming from a jazz background, I think would really help kind of open your ear up to that sound. So definitely check that out. And if you'd like the tabs and notation to these examples, I'm going to have those available over on my Patreon site, as well as a little backing track to jam to. So until next time, happy practicing and take care.